Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting Tuesday night edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm your host, Psychic Medium Angelo, and my boys are with me. Back in town. Back in town indeed. Dan the Man Sebastiano. How you doing, Danny?
I'm good, Angelo.
You're looking back in black, brother. Sharp hat. My boy's back in black. Beautiful. So let me ask you a question. How you faring with the wife gone?
Hey, we're recording, so
Be careful how you answer that.
It's miserable. I wish she was here.
There you go. In other words, Mikey, he's taking the fifth.
Life lessons with Dan the Man.
Exactly.
And Mr. Marvelous himself, Mike the Movie Maker Messier. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. An unusually rainy day here in Jacksonville, Florida, but
really?
Yep. Today we had rain,
Wow.
and my friends in New England told me it was sunny up here. But
oh, brother, it's been hotter than Hades up here today.
Yeah. So we had a little bit of.
I got to push my camera back just a little tad bit. Here we go. So, gentlemen, interesting week in wrestling. Got some live events happening. Actually, we lost a hero and we lost a victim this week. So it's been kind of an emotional roller coaster, up and down a little bit. We'll talk about both of those cases, but let's talk about the return of live crowds to indie shows. Danny?
Yeah, I heard several of the smaller promotions are starting to phase in live crowds, and on the larger scale, the WWE is going to take a page out of AEW's playbook and start using a non-enhancement talent their trainees and their NXT trainees and their school trainees to fill the crowd, a couple dozen, just to add ambiance. Anybody who watched the recent Raw could tell the difference. Although WWE has the hockey plexiglass wall up, which I must say was insanely distracting.
You know what, Dan? I'm glad you said something about that because I was going to touch on it. I get them stealing the AEW idea for, filling, a rather empty room. Mm-hmm. But what the hell were they? I don't even want to ask whose idea it was. I already know whose idea that was. But yeah, it is, insanely distracting, to use your words exactly. Is exactly the best way to put it. It's ridiculous.
I also couldn't help but notice the trainees in the crowd. There were no chairs. They were standing the entire time. I know. Kind of rough having them stand because Raw's a 3-hour show.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
Training exercise.
Don't know. You go from empty chairs to having a crowd standing in behind plexiglass. It just
did you hear what Mikey said? It was a training exercise.
It was like Oldie Anderson. How bad you want to be here? You'll stand for a 3-hour boring Raw if you like it or not. If you want to be in our company,
right?
Well, I'll tell you what. Just when you think they couldn't get any worse, they managed somehow. God bless them, to top themselves.
Yeah.
It was one of those. I just had to sit there and go, just kind of shake my head and go, well, look who the captain of the ship is, fellas.
Right.
It seems to me
not all there. Go ahead, Mikey.
It seems to me to be a way of kind of CYA for people who know what that stands for.
Cover your ass.
Right. Cover your assets or cover your ass, because it's like the WWE wants to say, hey, we're doing whatever we possibly can to protect our employees from this forced, it gives the visual impression, even though, as we know, both Roman Reigns has not been with the company since WrestleMania. Yeah. And the Intercontinental Championship, once held by Sami Zayn, was forced to be vacated and have a tournament. And that could come back to be a storyline if Sami comes back and faces the winner of that tournament. But
I have some news for you guys on the Who Wants Out Club. The last time we gathered, in fact, the three of us, there were several people that were asking for their releases. And as I said, I hinted toward a couple of high-profile individuals wanting their releases. Roman Reigns is one of them.
Interesting.
Be clear about that. He's one of them.
Interesting.
Charlotte is another one of them, and so is Bailey.
That's
They're both
really interesting. That's beyond interesting.
Yeah, they're both they're asking to be let go. In Charlotte's case, she's been denied once. Bailey, I don't know what the deal is. She's still there, unless they think there's something there that they can utilize her for. I know she does have experience running the gorilla position, and she's got experience in the back, but she's a wrestler. And you know, Mikey, wrestlers want to wrestle. You know, and Dan, that's that's why they signed up for the big show. You know, they want to wrestle.
Yeah, the story coming out as far as the Charlotte side goes, while she hasn't said anything, the company's thrown some money and a couple of nibble. What is that? Like, tried to get a nibble out of Ric Flair, see what other positions he wants. The dirt sheets coming out now is that the company's trying to buy Ric Flair off as a way to appease his daughter.
Yeah, I heard that. They spun it in such a way where they said that he has re-signed with them. Mm-hmm. Well, he hasn't re-signed with them because he can't re-sign with them. He can't. He's not under contract. He's no longer part of a Legends contract either. Okay. So he cannot re-sign with them in any way, shape, or form. The only thing they can do, and it's my sneaky suspicion that this is what happened, because he and Vince are close, they probably made a gentleman's agreement between the two of them and said, look, pal, I'll throw a couple dollars in your pocket and you'll hang around and make the rounds for us. What do you think, pal?
Well, I mean, they did that in the 90s with Dutch Mantel and
they certainly did.
Who was the other one? It was Dutch Mantel and another legend they had entirely on the payroll just to hang out in the locker room and tell stories. It was the only way to keep them away from other promotions.
I'm trying to remember. I do remember that. God, who was that?
Bret Hart?
Mikey, who was it?
I mean, Pat Patterson, maybe? Pat Patterson?
No, Patterson had a position.
It wasn't Pat.
This was you hear stories from people like JR and Jim Cornette, and they'll say how they would hang out with Dutch Mantel, and I want to say it was Ole Anderson, but I'm not sure.
I don't think it was Ole. I mean, it could have been.
No, you know what? I'm thinking. I don't know why. And Mike, correct, and Dan, correct me if you think I'm wrong. I'm thinking it might have been Fit Finley.
It's quite possible, but Fit worked with the women.
I may be wrong.
I don't think that's right, because Fit wasn't there until after WCW went under.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I'm thinking these are the guys that could possibly hit. Blackjack Mulligan, the Briscoes. Who's the My Boy guy, the old promoter who said My Boy? Jim Barnett. The guy that once booked both WWF and NWA at different times. I'm trying to think of his name. But the Blackjack Mulligan, Strongbow, Fred Blassie. I mean, there was a lot of guys, from what I understand, that were kind of Vince favorites that they didn't want going anywhere else. And
you're not talking about the George
Scott. Yeah, that's George Scott.
George, okay, yeah,
exactly,
I thought you were talking about
George
Scott.
Of.
Yeah,
I was thinking of George Scott. I mean, Vince had a lot of guys that he looked after. And some guys like Captain Lou Albano, apparently his father looked after. And when
Vince didn't like Lou.
Vince Jr. didn't like Lou, but Vince.
No, that's well documented. They didn't. Right. I shouldn't say they did not like each other. I don't think Lou gave a shit either way, because he just was kind of guy.
He was making money whether Vince loved it or not.
Yeah, but Vince Jr. made it real clear he didn't like Lou. He didn't like his drinking. He didn't like his unorthodox ways. But don't forget, Lou was old school. He got away with stuff for decades.
Right.
But you got to understand the history there. Lou Albano was amusing to Vince Sr. He made him laugh.
Yeah.
That's why I kept him around.
Captain
That's
Lou
as
got
simple as
great
that.
heel heat.
It really is.
Angelo, my belief is that Captain Lou Albano, for whatever reason, is becoming a forgotten legend. I mean, people of this generation will harp on how great Bobby the Brain Heenan is and was.
Yeah.
Well deserved. But Captain
Well-
Lou Albano, the Grand Wizard, and Classy Freddie Blassie at one time were the Triangle of Terror, and that
Funny
lasted
you
about.
should say that, Mikey. Funny you should say that, my boy.
Well,
My
there-
boy.
my
Funny
boy.
you should say that, my boy.
But didn't that
Because
Triangle of
I
Terror
got
last
something to
10
tell
years?
you guys.
Sure.
Uh-oh.
We're going to have a show. I was going to spring it on you Thursday, but I'll do it now. We're going to have a show on Wrestling with the Future called Relatively Speaking. And it will feature Pam Allen, Gordon Soley's daughter.
I
Okay.
got her book.
Cammy Albano, Lou's daughter.
Right.
And it's going to feature another surprise wrestling child. I got to keep at least one of them a surprise.
Of course.
Absolutely.
I've got Gordon Soley and his daughter's book. If that's the same daughter that co-wrote Gordon's
It is.
book,
Yeah,
then
there is.
I've got a copy of that book, mere feet from me. And
Yeah.
I've got a Captain Lou Albano LJN figure that I purchased recently.
I know
So-
you're never without it, Mike. It's like your American Express card.
That's right. I got my Captain Lou. I could go get him right now, but I won't.
So yeah, so that's what's going on. We're gonna have a and the son of Bobby Fulton come on the show. His name is Dylan Hines.
Is he
And he'll be
wrestling?
on the show.
Is-
And I know, Mike, I know that you know Dylan.
I actually rang and introduced for his father, Bobby Fulton. That was my first ring announcing gig, and Bobby Fulton was one of the most gracious and nice guys on the card.
Yeah.
That was in Greensboro, North Carolina, that I did my first ring announcing gig.
Yeah. Great guy. Great guy. And he's, I wish him, good health right now. He's having some issues. Speaking of issues, we've had some issues in wrestling this week. One of them completely unavoidable. The other completely avoidable. Of course, Dan the Man, you touched on the passing of Shad Gaspard, who was swept under by a rip current in California, managed to save his son through some quick acting lifeguards, but he lost his life. The final act of a father hero.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, just days later, a young 22-year-old Japanese woman wrestler named Hana Kimura committed suicide as a result of what's being called, I should say, an alleged bullying incident. Now, I know, Mikey, you've got some info to share on that, and then Danny, I'll let you pick up where Mikey left off.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, full disclosure, I was not, and this is not disrespectful, but I was not familiar with her work or her career until Saturday. And then I did some research on Hana Kimura. She was not only a professional wrestling with Stardom, Japanese women's group, and she was one of the top stars there, if not the top star there. She was also on a show called Terrace House. I had no idea what Terrace House was. It's a Netflix series. It's going on its 5th or 6th season. It's from Japan, and it's kind of the Japanese version of Big Brother. Now, the show is so popular. The show Terrace House is so popular in Japan that it's been subtitled for Netflix for American audiences. So if you have Netflix,
I'm not familiar with it. I've never heard of it.
I wasn't either until this unfortunate suicide.
Yeah.
So Saturday night, I stayed up till 6 a.m, starting with the most recent episode of Terrace House, and I found myself in episode 20, where Hana comes in. It's the idea of the show is 6 singles in their 20s, so very good-looking people. Hana, when she comes onto this show on episode 20 of Terrace House, she lights this thing up. She is half Japanese, half Indonesian. She's got star quality. She's got these pink braids, and every guy in the house is twisting their neck to take a look at their new roommate.
Well,
And
I'll tell you what, not for nothing, God rest her soul. She's a beautiful girl.
well,
Um,
this is the
and what's
yeah.
really, the irony of it is that she's more famous now in death than she ever was to most people in life. I know, like many people, Dan, I think you'd be hard pressed to say that you knew who she was before Saturday.
Yeah, the average wrestling fan, if best case scenario, would have known her in passing, and that's not a knock on her at all. It's just she had she was huge in Japan, as Mikey touched on, and she did do I believe it was one or two appearances with excuse me, with All Elite. As part of they did the international outreach when they first started, but yeah, outside of Japan, I mean, you can name 100 Japanese wrestlers that are huge, and the average American fan's not going to know them. It's interesting. Her influence might get pretty be profound, more so because one of the big stories coming out now is obviously, like Mikey said, other than wrestling, she was also a huge reality TV star. Japan, Parliament,
and I knew none of that, which prompts this question, Dan. Do you think that it's worth you and I doing or exploring the subject of Japanese wrestling on the show? I don't think we've ever broached it here before.
I mean, it might be a topic depending on how you look at it. The influence Japan has. I mean, you look at anybody that looks at some of the tapes, anybody from a Bruiser Brody to Hulk Hogan wrestling in Japan. Hulk Hogan's in Japan doing high knee lifts, drop kicks, and mat wrestling. Everybody learned.
It's interesting you say that. And I'm going to stop you right there because it's really interesting that you say that. I had this conversation not 2 days ago with the guy who saw Hulk wrestle in Japan and said he actually wrestled a wrestling match. But he said to me, they, whoever they are, the promoters, I suppose, they would not let him wrestle here. They protected him. He was a marketing tool to get butts into seats. He was over like Rover with the kids, with the moms and dads that spent money on Hulkamania, foam fingers, and all this other, assorted garbage.
That's part of his split from the AWA was that they say Vern Gagne had wanted some of Hulk's Japanese money, and because Vern Gagne's narrative was, I made you before you went to Japan. I should get a cut of the money that you're putting in
I think it was actually you that told me that. Yeah. Now, I knew Vern was tough to do business with, but, what's right is right, but, I think that's a really unreasonable request.
Yeah.
By any standards.
Going back to the story at hand, though, something we maybe look at down the road is Japan. Obviously they're one of the world's leading industrial powers when it comes to like connectivity and internet and whatnot. They're in the process now of beginning debates on cyberbullying laws because of this incident. And they could fair well be one of the first countries to pass major sweeping legislation.
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
Outside of some of the bullying laws in the United States that hold people legally accountable for.
Well, Japan is a very progressive culture. Certainly, certainly the most progressive in the Far East that I know of. I don't know how China fares or Indonesia or some of the Far East countries and territories. But Mikey, what do you think? You think it's worth exploring the Japanese question?
Well, as far as us covering the Japanese wrestling promotions, I'd be up for exploring it. I know that a couple of years ago, I was starting to get into New Japan a little bit before AEW launched, and I was looking for an alternative. This is what I discovered, just on a shoot level, so to speak. I bought the New Japan website subscription. The way that they did things, say you got your subscription on July 1st, you would pay, for the whole month of July. If you got your subscription on July 31st, you pay for the whole month of July, and then you get charged again for August 1st. So I found that to be just something to note, that if you started your subscription after the first, you were losing money as it went along. The other thing I found is that their website was terribly non-user friendly.
I try.
It was
I actually
not good.
tried going on. I was like, I'm lost. I said, I'm done.
What I would love, guys, I would love to watch the classic, either New Japan, All Japan. As a matter of fact, I just ordered some Dragon Gate Pro USA DVDs because what I like as a wrestling fan is Japanese main event matches with like Baba versus Harley Race, Ric Flair versus Rick Martel in Japan. Kerry Von Erich defending the NWA World Title in Japan, or even the modern stuff, with the exception of Kenny Omega. I'm not a big fan of his.
Yeah.
But I like to see those matches in English with English commentary, because
I just saw an interesting match, Mikey, that you just now prompted my memory. It was about, let's see, today's Tuesday. It was, I believe it was Saturday night, in fact.
Okay.
I saw a match with Buddy Rogers versus Ricky Dozan.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, from the Tokyo Dome in Japan.
Well, that sounds like an awesome match.
It was crazy. It went 45 minutes.
I have a
almost 45 full minutes.
It's probably on this 6-disc Rico Dozan DVD set I have, so please no spoilers. But
no, I won't say anything. The reason I bring up the Japan question is, and not for nothing, but Dave Meltzer puts it over to the moon like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
So there's got to be, look, if it walks and talks, it's got to get legs to move around.
Yeah, Meltzer's taken a bit of a beating on social media in the last few years for his favoring of that style. And those shows.
Dan, explore that, Dan.
I take nothing away from, say, the classic. Obviously, the classic example would be the trilogy between Kenny Omega, and Okada. Those were some of Meltzer's first 6-star matches, and they were impressive. But the general consensus, yes, okay, you have to like the Kenny Omega style. If you're not in that flippy indie kind of 25-30 super kicks a match style, that's by no means are you going to watch Kenny Omega Okada and think this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the talent is clearly there. I take nothing away. I'm not criticizing. I enjoyed those matches, but Meltzer has a history of favoring that style. So some of his reviews tend to be better, whereas you talk about something like Kerry Von Erich defending the NWA title, or some of the American athletes competing in Japan, they may have the same or a better match that won't get as well reviewed because it's not the Meltzer style of Japanese wrestling.
Yeah, I actually saw, talking about Kenny Omega, I actually saw the documentary Omega Man.
Right.
Which was shot almost entirely in Japan. And his tag team partner and sometimes feuding partner is a guy named Ibushi. And I watched this kid work, and he's amazing. And these Japanese wrestlers are actually really, really good. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Of course, that's documentary form. I don't know if I could sit down and watch, a full wrestling card. I don't know how much it would pique my interest, unless all the matches were like what I saw.
Right.
Which I don't know. But I'm certainly open to exploring that question for sure.
It'll definitely be something to think about down the road.
The Japanese are known for having great epic cards. They're known for having great epic matches. I think the thing that myself and other American fans, or anywhere but Japan fans, might have a hard time with is that storyline aspect of pro wrestling, the mic work, all the things that we love. It's nothing against the Japanese. It's nothing against us. Just something's going to be lost in translation.
Well, I was just going to say it doesn't translate. Their mic skills doesn't translate. The other thing that doesn't translate is when you watch Japanese wrestling, the crowd doesn't react the way we do here.
Right.
They're very polite. They applaud at the end of the match. but basically they sit fairly silent.
Yeah, very, very more like the crowd of a sumo match than the crowd of an American wrestling event.
Yeah, good analogy, Dan. Real good analogy. Absolutely.
The other
So
thing,
I think you're going to lose something in translation either way. I think Mikey's right about that.
indeed,
So we'll see. I mean, I'm certainly open to exploring it. We'll we'll give it, I guess we'll give it more consideration. We'll talk about it.
right? It's
And
a
and
difference.
see if there's, let's ask people to do this. If you have any interest in us doing a show on Japanese wrestling, inbox us on Facebook at Wrestling with the Future, either in our private group or our public page, or shoot us an email at wrestlingwiththefuture@gmail.com and let us know what you think of us hitting up the Japanese subject. Now, the other thing, Mike Messier,
Yes.
of note this week, our buddy Jim Cornette went on somewhat of an epic tirade this week. Tell everybody what the open mouth insert foot did this time.
Well, here's the thing. Jim Cornette made a statement on his podcast, and the great Brian Last, as he calls himself, and I have nothing against Brian, but Brian's the co-host, and Jim kind of went off about Becky Lynch's pregnancy announcement on Raw. And
Yeah.
basically, Jim, he didn't really bury or insult Becky. He questioned in a kind of volatile and rude way why this young couple,
To
Becky
say the least.
right. Well, why would
To
they?
say
Why
the
would,
least. Are you kidding me?
why would they choose to have a baby at this time when she's making millions of dollars or $1 million, as Jim
Yeah.
estimated? Why would they make this decision to have a baby? And Jim kind of got her age wrong. He said that
It's
she
a
was
valid question, Mikey.
Well, here's the thing. It's their personal choice. And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing where anytime you get into a woman's reproductive organs or making a comment on her having a baby, you're not going to win in
No.
the
No, you're
court
right.
of in the court of public opinion. If my female cousin were to get pregnant and I were to say, "Oh, you sure about that? You already have 3 kids. You really need a 4th?"
Yeah.
Then I would be banned from the family barbecue for a year.
Oh, my
And
God, sure.
And I think Jim kind of did that here. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
Jim, in a way, complimented Becky because he said, "What is she, 30?" Well, she's 33. And
Right.
I'm not an expert on women's reproductive organs, but I would say that there is actually a
God.
huge difference between 33 years old for a woman having a baby and 30. I
Yeah.
mean, once you hit 30, once you hit 33 as a woman, your biological clock is ticking pretty damn loud.
Yeah.
And I think that Cornette, and I listen to Cornette and I listen to that rant, but I think what he might be missing is she can't put off having a baby for 10 years because that increases her likelihood of death or illness and having a
True.
baby. It increases the disability percentage risk for the baby.
Absolutely.
If she's pregnant at age 30 and this was on her things to do list, and it means that what's it going to mean for her career that she's not going to wrestle Brie Bella
Well,
at
that's
WrestleMania
the
39?
question.
Who cares?
That's the question, Dan the man. And there are people who are already addressing that question. What's it going to do for her career? Well, let's talk about this. She's already killed any notion of the man character.
correct. And
That's done. That's out the window.
yes,
She is, however, as Mikey pointed out, she's only 33. So she's young enough to have a baby, get back in shape. She's in pretty good shape now. Of course, having a baby does strange things to one's body. And if you look at people before and after childbirth, that speaks for itself. I don't have to go there. And I won't because I'm smart and I'm old. And
it's
and
also a show with hosted by 3 guys. Maybe we're not the best experts to talk about that level of the process.
This is true. This is true. Absolutely. I will concede that point to my co-host. Absolutely. The other thing is, if she does decide, and it's, as Mikey said, it's a personal choice to have a child. It's probably the most personal choice anybody can make. But if at some point she decides to say, okay, I need to get back to work, work being wrestling, she gets herself back in shape again. What happens to her career? Where does it go? People already, have come to accept and acknowledge the man character, and notwithstanding the fact that she's the most over merch seller by far in WWE for a very long time, in fact.
I don't think it hurts her at all, Angelo.
And he just happens to have the Becky Lynch pop right behind.
Amazon exclusive, one of the first to get a deal out with them.
We are unbiased commentators here on the world of pro wrestling.
Well, I think it's interesting to note, and something I find myself doing frequently on the show. I'm actually gonna somewhat defend Jim Cornette here.
You can defend him. I defend him a lot.
You've heard the rants he said. He took two sides. One, like you touched on, Angelo. I know we talked about it on the show already. He was upset from the perspective of the character, that when she came out and she was crying and she talked about, I had my opportunity and I got to do this for all these years and I didn't think I was going to make it. And she basically admitted, I've been playing a character for the last 5 years. Yeah. So when she comes back, the last kicker, that character's done. No, it's no different than Stone Cold shaking Vince McMahon's hand, admitting this has been a work the whole time. He could never go back to being the teetering on realism badass, because you knew it's a script now.
Well, Dan, what do you make
that point up? Go ahead.
I was going to say, what do you make of the fact that she did that teary goodbye? There are a lot of people that are taking that as, I'm finished.
Yeah, you have to look at the perspective from anybody that's ever had children or has children. Right. She's the child's father is going to be on the road 300 days a year for quite some time. If Seth Rollins wrestles into his early 40s, which is about the average age, he's still got almost another 10 years of being gone 300 days a year. If she wants, she'll never realistically be able to come back unless she takes the children on the road with her. She'll never be able to go back to a full-time schedule, because you can't have two parents on the road 325 days a year.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother.
And he brought that point up, but also he looked at it from the territory days of a boss. You're my number one merch seller, my number one ticket seller. You walk into my office one day in the middle of your multi-million-dollar contract and say, I'm done. And he looked at it from the perspective of how much money and tickets are being left on the table. And now he had really, like Mikey said, that's one of those subjects you probably don't get that heated over, but somebody else's kids. But I don't think the criticism of Jim Cornette being this baby-hating monster was fair either.
Oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't see that.
The wussification of social media made a lot of what he said worse than it was. It may have been bad to a point, but he's not out there shitting all over a child. He's questioning from his knowledge of the business the timing and choice. And as an opinion host who makes his living having an opinion, that shouldn't surprise anybody.
The solution is quite simple, and of course, too bad I'm not working for the mighty WWE right now. I'd have a cut of this idea. Right. The mom and the man, the reality show of Becky having a baby with Seth by her side. Yeah. So you bring all those Ms. and Mrs. cameras into Becky's house with Seth, and you're going to have a show that's going to get higher ratings than the Miz and Maurice did. And they got great ratings. Absolutely. So
that's true.
There you go, folks. It's not that hard.
Of all people, Vince Russo mentioned on his podcast the storyline that was in their laps. They could have made one hell of an exit story for her. Instead, she comes out teary-eyed, officially ends her character, basically admits the entire business is bogus, and walks out. Here's the title, Asuka. Thanks. I got to play a character for 5 years. Yeah. I'm going to go have kids now. And I think that was you always mentioned how, Cornette and Russo agree on more than they want to admit. That's the biggest problem a lot of fans have, was the way Becky's exit speech was a person admitting, I've been acting. None of this was real. I got to play a part. It was my dream role. And instead of there's so many ways she could have worded that exit without completely, I mean, granted, the kayfabe, that genie's long been out of the bottle, but you don't have to constantly remind people that what you're seeing isn't real. And
and you know what? I said that, Dan, on the last show that we did. I actually said that if anyone had any doubts as to whether kayfabe was dead, there are no longer any doubts.
Absolutely.
Because Becky Lynch put the final nail in the coffin.
Hey guys, I have to disagree a little bit. I mean, I only watched the speech once. I will watch the speech again. If you've
got another perspective, I'd love to hear it.
I didn't interpret the speech when I watched it on Raw that night. I didn't interpret her as breaking any new ground as far as breaking character. I interpreted her as saying, I got to be everything I wanted to be and more, and it was because of you, the fans, not the promoters, not the other wrestlers. She was really trying to reinforce that connection with the fan base, that the fan base, whether this is true or not, feels a certain kinship or ownership to Becky Lynch's character because they feel that when they cheered her when she was supposedly going heel, that's what put her over the top. I didn't see it as a breaking kayfabe storyline thing any more so than, say, The Undertaker's 1998 promo in the ring, where he kind of broke character a little bit. And that was 1998. This is 2020. Yeah. I wasn't offended by Becky's speech. If there's anything about this that I would hold against Becky, and maybe it's her fault, maybe it's not. Apparently, she says that she thought she might have been pregnant before WrestleMania. She took a test. It came back negative. No, you're not pregnant. She went ahead and wrestled Shayna Baszler, and she won, which was kind of a surprise because a lot of people, including myself, thought Baszler would win the title. Yeah. And then she finds out that she's pregnant. Well, guess who this buries? Shayna Baszler. So the thing, look, we can second guess each other all we want, but if I was going to second guess Becky Lynch, if she really had a suspicion, test result or no test result, that she was pregnant, maybe she should have taken the second pregnancy test. Maybe she should have gone to Shayna, gone to Vince McMahon, gone to Triple H, gone to Stephanie and say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on with me right now, but I might be pregnant. Why don't we put the belt on Shayna just in case I'm pregnant, and then if I'm not pregnant, I can get it back in the next pay-per-view. I think
they already had the precedence for changing the main event, because if you remember the main event that was supposed to be Becky and Ronda, and Vince shoehorned Charlotte in there because of the narrative of wanting Charlotte to have something and not sure if Becky could carry the load. I mean, they could have done something to, if they didn't want to put the belt on Shayna, they had, I believe the narrative is about 2 weeks, which with all the YouTube and the fact that they announce matches on Twitter now, they could have easily added a third or fourth person to the match, which also could have taken the physical load off Becky and put the belt on someone else. Put it on Asuka if that was going to be your plan down the road anyway.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, guys.
What do you think, Mike?
I have to say that we're all thinking like, and this is not an insult because I'm running the mix, but we're all thinking of like things as 1980s, 1990s pro wrestling fans. We have to remember Becky's Lynch fan base is teenage girls. Becky's Lynch's fan base consists highly of Kim Kardashian fans, highly of Total Bellas fans. We're not in her fan base. They're not expecting me to go out and get a Becky Lynch t-shirt. I mean, Dan has the pop-up doll or whatever, but that's his own personal thing. I've got no problem with that. But for the most part, when they think of Becky Lynch and who are they marketing to, it's teenage girls. Now, guess what? The teenage girl today wants to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and she wants to have 3 or 4 kids. She wants to be the princess, and she wants to be the mom. So Becky Lynch has fulfilled all these fantasies. Mm-hmm. So that's why a reality show, the mom and the man, Becky and Seth have a baby. I mean, it's got money printed all over it. Of course, once again, I'm not on the. I should be getting commission for this, but I'm not, as we've all discussed in the past.
You always find a way to put yourself over, don't you, Mike?
No one else will, Angelo, except you, buddy. But I mean,
if Mikey wasn't talking about himself, he wouldn't have anything to say half the time.
That's right.
I'm scary, ain't it, Danny? Scary.
Well,
scary.
Today I had.
Let's
Go ahead.
Let me. You guys talk. Let me just to see if our buddy is ready here.
All right.
Today I had a funny thing, guys. We're just rallying up the troops of pro wrestling. I made a meme on Facebook that said, should the WWE loyalists who criticized AEW for using old WWE wrestlers now apologize for WWE ripping off AEW's wrestler in the crowd technique. And
Hey,
that got some heated debate.
All punchlines aside, though, Billy Gunn and his son have been the MVP of AEW for about a month now because of how good they've been just as fans.
Yeah.
Right. And Pineapple Pete is
Yeah,
third
exactly.
place.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, the thing is that the wrestling fan war that I predicted between AEW and WWE really has come true. If you guys are in those Facebook groups, you'll see that there clearly are divides between those who favor WWE and those who favor AEW, which I think is great. I think it's good.
Yeah, it reminds me of a digital age version of the old Monday Night Wars. I mean, I remember being in high school, and you'd argue between Raw and Nitro, SmackDown and Thunder, and it was like, there was a divide there. Now, I imagine if Twitter and Facebook existed when I was in high school, it'd probably be more because, you had to talk to people face to face then, so you couldn't use all these terms that people love throwing out on the internet now without getting your teeth kicked in. But it's interesting to see. I think the one thing I've noticed is we've talked before, Angelo, you and I, about like the WWE apologists, people who constantly have a reason why the WWE product is good, even though it's not. The AEW's fan base aren't as apologetic. They're more aggressive. I mean, I could say, I watched the AEW pay-per-view, and this was great, and this was great, and this was great. Holy crap, that Stadium Stampede match was some of the worst crap I've ever seen in my life. I did love the bit with Matt, spoilers, with Matt Hardy changing as he got dunked in the water into his different characters. I thought that was funny, but watching it was garbage. And you make that comment, I give the pay-per-view a B+. I liked everything except, and holy shit, you would have thought I just said that everybody who watches AEW needs to go jump off a bridge. Pete, the way people jump down my throat with that narrative, it's this, no criticism whatsoever of AEW is
I'll tell you why. It's a slippery slope. The day of the wrestling fan, let's be real clear about it. The day of the wrestling fan is gone. All you have left now are loyalists and apologists. Our friend Evan Ginsberg loves to use the term WWE apologist.
Yeah.
And I understand what he means by that. Of course, that term, slips over the heads of those individuals that he's addressing, as you would expect it to.
Right.
I don't think they're quite capable of understanding what he means by it. On the other hand, it's a niche market now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no longer wrestling for the masses. You've got the AEW market. You've got the WWE market, the Ring of Honor market. Everything is a niche market. Even New Japan is a niche market. Mikey, what happened to our wrestling fans? Where'd they all go?
Well, I mean, I think that for me, the show Tough Enough, in the original Tough Enough, I think it was 2001, 2002.
Mikey, hold on a second. Dan, just so you know, I've heard this before.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to because you've not heard this before. I just want to prepare you that Mikey is not a fan of Tough Enough. Continue, Mikey.
Well, I'll clarify. I was a fan of Tough Enough. What I wasn't a fan, I was and I wasn't. It was addictive watching. I'm talking about the very first season with Maven and then Nydia and the first couple of years of Tough Enough.
Sure.
When they pulled that curtain back so far, we weren't talking like, Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin and Bill Goldberg making some, insults to each other back and forth. We're talking about, we're going to show how these guys are taking back bumps. We're going to show this all. Watch Monday Night Raw for 2 hours, then turn the station to MTV and watch Tough Enough and find out how they did it. That's when.
Well, and I'll stop you there because that's Dan. That's what you've heard me talk about since day one on this show, since your first day you were here. The willing suspension of disbelief. Everybody wants to know, where did it go? Mikey just told you where it went.
Exactly. And I've brought that up before. You look at the crowds. My favorite in my tape collection, I still watch it, when I get the chance, is the old Memphis territories. Jerry Lawler, Dutch Mantell, back when Cornette was young, the Maniac #1, those guys. You had every show, you'd see the cops at ringside, 3, 4, 5 people jumping the barricade every show.
Oh my God!
Heaven forbid. And there was women jumping the barricade too. If heaven
Oh
forbid,
my God! They were the worst ones. What are you talking about?
Ricky Morton. You put your hands on Terry Taylor or Ricky Morton, and women are jump the barricade, kick your ass.
Brother, let me tell you something. You put your hands on Ricky Morton or Terry Taylor, you were toast.
Exactly.
Those women would tear your ass up. Speaking of Memphis, we got the King of Memphis. Well, the other King of Memphis coming in Thursday night. The legendary superstar Bill Dundee will be here. He was a big part of that too, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
A heat-seeking missile, if there ever was one.
He's
Yeah.
on that Mount Rushmore. I said, Angelo, the Mount Rushmore of Memphis wrestling, let's say from 1980 on, with respect to Jackie Fargo before that. Superstar Bill Dundee, Austin Idol, Jerry the King Lawler, and Jimmy the Mouth of the South Hart. And if you had to take somebody out, you'd probably put Jackie Fargo in Jimmy Hart's spot. But those guys were icons of Memphis wrestling.
Oh my God. But to Dan's point, it was believable.
Right.
It was believable.
That's,
to get to get a 70 or 80-year-old woman shaking her cane at you.
Right.
Okay. And hitting you with it.
Yeah.
And hitting you with it. And I've seen that. There was this one little old lady. She was at every Memphis match at the Mid-South Coliseum. She had the overcoat. She had the granny glasses, the whole bit. She had this cane, boy. That thing was a damn lethal weapon because she will cold cock you with it. And did many times. Many times. Ask Bill Dundee. Ask Jerry Lawler. Ask, here you go. Ask Honky Tonk Man, who was wrestling as Wayne Farris at the time, under his real name. Ask him. It was a territory steeped in old Southern wrestling tradition and believability.
See, and that's, like I've touched on before, that Tough Enough is a good example towards the end of the Attitude Era, towards the end of WCW's run in 2000. When you started pulling the curtain back and now the fans get to be involved in the fact that it's not real. I hate using that word, but you know what I mean when I say that it's a show.
Yeah.
A lot of that fun left. Like, kayfabe was broken in the 80s. We knew that, Duggan and the Sheik getting caught in the car together, and then Hogan's telling some of the stories Vince McMahon in that speech he did about we're entertainment because he was trying to dodge the taxes that come with boxing and TV sport. That was gone, but the fun was still there. When that fun left, you look at the numbers, crowds left in droves. I mean, there was a period.
Oh my God, yeah, and they never came back, Dan. They never came back.
An indie show with 12 nobodies and 1 or 2 names that people might know more than 50 miles from the arena would put 10,000 people a month. And now, I mean, the flagship Monday Night Raw, you're lucky if you get 4 or 5,000. And the funniest thing is that it doesn't matter because the smallest crowds that wrestling has ever had, and it's the most profitable it has ever been because the money is in the internet, it's in the TV ratings, it's in the commercials. 100,000 people watching one commercial will get you more money than 10 million people buying a ticket nowadays.
Do you know, dollar for dollar, the Memphis territory alone, forget about everything else down south, the Memphis territory alone outdrew WWE financially for almost 8 full years. Okay.
Yep.
You're talking about the Mid-South Coliseum. It holds 18,500 people. They filled it every week, every Monday. Listen to this one. On a Monday, okay? not a Friday or Saturday night, on a Monday.
Yeah.
Because they were able to get the Coliseum cheaper on a Monday.
Right.
And people would pay 10 or 15 bucks for a ticket instead of 150 or 200 now, if you're lucky. Right. You know? But they would fill this place every week. You do 18,000, let's say 19,000 every Monday for a month, okay?
Yeah.
Talk about 10, let's say 15 bucks average ticket. You got pay-per-views that don't make that kind of money.
Right.
Okay? Think about that. You got pay-per-views that don't take in that kind of revenue that these guys were taking in 1 month. In 1 month, and they did it for 8 years.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, guys.
Go ahead, Mikey.
Those wrestlers, Jerry Lawler especially, people would ask him, hey, Jerry, why don't you go to the NWA? Why don't you go to the WWF? Why don't you go to AWA exclusively? And Jerry would say, why should I? I live at home and I make more money here than I would going to those other places. Now, that doesn't mean that the rest of the wrestlers got paid as well as he did. But the point is, Jerry was making a killing. And, you know, just it's pretty interesting because things do change in pro wrestling. One thing that I want to bring up is there's a difference between the level of commitment to put your thumb on a remote control and watch Monday Night Raw or AEW on Wednesday night, or even go on the internet and watch some other wrestling, MLW. I was watching a lot of MLW today with Brian Pillman Jr.'s matches. But there's a difference in commitment as a fan between watching on TV or your computer and actually purchasing money, driving to an arena, paying for the parking fee. If you have kids, bringing the kids. If you have a friend, bringing a friend. Going to the arena and watching a show live. That's why I've mentioned several times that I'm grateful that I did go to a February 29th, 2020 live pro wrestling show, NXT house show in Jacksonville. It was not the greatest show in the world, but I'm glad I took a lot of photographs. It happened to be the night that our buddy Jeff, the ref, passed away. Yeah. And it's just a special memory that I have going into this coronavirus situation, that I got to go to the wrestling show, probably one of the last wrestling shows that took place in the United States before this horrible situation. So there is something special for those fans listening or watching us on YouTube. Remember that as much as we criticize, you know, our opinions about wrestling, if a wrestling show, big or small, comes to your neighborhood, if you happen to be one of those wrestling fans that have never gone to a live event and have only watched on TV, get yourself to the arena. If it's an armory, if it's a big arena. Absolutely. Because surprisingly, guys, a lot of fans, like for instance, a lot of NFL football fans have never gone to an NFL football game. Well, you've got to, you know, you got to do that, because even if, for me, like when I was a hockey fan in my youth, hockey at the time was so much better in the arena than watching on TV. But when I would watch the games on TV, the Washington Capitals on TV, you could kind of put yourself in the modality of being in the arena. Yeah. So when I watch,
Mikey, let me stop you there, because I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
You mentioned football. You mentioned hockey. Relative to the sport of, well, I'll use the word sport. Relative to the sport of pro wrestling, football and hockey are quite expensive to buy tickets to.
Correct.
When you're talking about, you know, let's say just if you're able to afford it, a 50-yard line ticket.
Oh God, you're paying thousands, depending on the team. You're paying thousands,
$3,000-$4,000.
Right.
Yep. Front row seats at the local indie show run you $25.
And I got news for you, fellas. Very few of those tickets are comped.
At the wrestling show or the football game?
Yeah. It's interesting that the comp tickets are up in the press box.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, talk about wrestling aside from WrestleMania, which is a whole financial different ballgame. The average wrestling ticket ringside is, Dan, $250?
Yeah, that's about what we paid the last time SmackDown was here.
Right, about $2.50.
Yeah, the
it's relatively inexpensive
Yeah, first 4 rows, and we got to keep the chair.
And if you do that with mom and dad and Junior and his sister,
Yeah.
that's going to set you back at least $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got to buy gimmicks. Then you got to buy hot dogs and popcorn and cotton candy and soda.
Yeah.
You're looking at a $2,000 night, brother.
Yeah.
Okay. You're looking at a $2,000, and you got to park your car. That's another $40.
Right.
Okay. But it's still cheaper than going to see hockey or a football game. Think about that.
Yeah.
Well, this NXT show, guys, I went to, the tickets were $10 each. You got 2 slices of pizza and a soda for $5. If they had a couple of the new talents were signing autographs for free before the show. This was an NXT house show, so I know that WWE regular, main level Raw or SmackDown would be more expensive. But my point remains that pretty much anywhere, pretty much anywhere you can find a decent local wrestling promotion within driving distance. And when this and I think at the beginning of the show, you guys were talking about some indie promotions are starting to let fans come back with certain regulations. Yeah. And I would say that if you're comfortable, if each individual has to make their own safety protocol, but if you're comfortable, go to some of these shows, wear a mask, do what you have to do. But I think it's good
and I think, Mikey, to the credit of the wrestling fan, I think they don't give a shit. They just want to be there.
Yeah.
I don't think wrestling fans honestly care to be 6 or 10 feet apart. I think. Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, I think it's also important. The kind of people like myself and you guys that would frequent indie shows, we also are invested enough to understand that your Brian Pillman Jr. and some of these indie wrestlers that haven't been able to perform since February. I mean, they're several months incomeless. So I want to go back to the show so I can start buying tickets and buying T-shirts and throwing some money back in their pocket.
Sure. Well, a lot of these guys, I can tell you from the guys I know, and I know a lot of them, they're living off their merch sales right now. Were it not for T-shirts, picture gimmicks, or any other number of gimmicks they have.
Yeah.
They have no income. So I encourage people, buy T-shirts, buy 8x10s, buy Brian Pillman's, Mullet King shirt.
Right. Well, that's,
do it. Absolutely.
Not to
buy Wrestling with the Future T-shirts. There you go. Here they go. Look at that.
We need that size 3XL for your buddy.
And with some of the sites that specialize in that,
I'll get you one, Mikey.
Pro Wrestling Tees, for example, has been doing all kinds of different sales and promotions where X number of dollars goes to this charity or this fund for people. So if they want to, the money's out there, and that's why I've been saying before I mentioned it on the show is the indie guys. Now's not the time to go to WWE.com and buy a T-shirt, get one half off. WWE doesn't need your money right now.
No.
The indie wrestlers making $75 a show that are living off T-shirt sales, they need your money.
They need your money
more than Vince McMahon does right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I will say this, guys. I did in the wake of Shad Gaspard's unfortunate death, a week ago or so. Collar and Elbow has a really nice. That's Al Snow's company, and they have a really nice T-shirt there. That's a tribute T-shirt to Shad Gaspard, and according to Collar and Elbow, their website, all the proceeds will be going to Shad's family. And I
saw that.
Yeah, so I purchased one. They had my size. It hasn't arrived in the mail yet, but it's coming. And I was happy to do that because
big shout out to Al Snow and Collar and Elbow for sure.
And I think that was an unfortunate death. If I could circle back to our first topic, or one of our first topics, the young lady in Japan.
Yes, please.
Just to clarify, guys. From my understanding, and I'm not an expert, this young lady, she was getting a lot of flack for her presence on this reality show. And what happened on the reality show, and I watched about 6 or 7 episodes with her on it, and I hadn't gotten to the episode yet, but apparently she slapped a co-star on the show. And there was a situation where her wrestling costume from a big match that she had was put in the washer and dryer by accident, and it shrunk or it got damaged, and she was upset, and she had some type of minor physical altercation with a co-star. And I guess she gave the co-star an open-handed slap. And that caused this tidal wave of hateful comments and tweets to her on social media.
Now, was this part of the show or was this a shoot?
It wasn't scripted. It was a shoot. If you believe that it's a reality show and not scripted, this terrace house I'm talking about. So it was a reality situation on a reality show, and people got very upset with her because she slapped somebody, and they started, most of the hateful comments were from Japanese reality show fans, not from American wrestling fans, right? And
well, we've seen this play out before. For those of you that are old enough to remember, way back when there was a show called Jenny Jones.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There was a guy on the show, and the title of the show was Confess My Secret Crush.
Right.
Well, there was a gay man on, not that there's anything wrong with that, who brought on another guy who is not gay.
Right.
And he confessed his affection for him.
Correct.
Well, this man later that day or the next day, one day removed from taping, went on a killing spree.
Yep.
And killed the guy who brought him on the show. And then killed himself. And that's a real life case that happened on a reality show. It's not the first time it's happened. It's happened on the Maury Povich show, where a guest committed suicide. They felt bullied. So if this was intended to be, a reality show, well, we know that reality shows by and large are scripted. At least our interpretation of reality shows are scripted, unless in Japan they truly are shoots.
I'll jump in if I could, Angelo.
Yeah, please, Mike, sure.
Because I watched about 9 or 10 of these episodes of Terrace House on Saturday night, and basically it was a pretty interesting show. And to my eye, it wasn't scripted. Because some of the episodes are really boring. So what they do on this particular show is they have these 20-year-olds are the ones in the house, and the show is kind of watched. They go to these segments of these middle-aged people who are kind of like advisors watching the show together in a living room, drinking wine, narrating and commentating on the action of these younger people, as if you're kind of enjoying this wine party of watching the show while you're watching it. It was a pretty cool show. It's a pretty cool setup. What was that show, Dan, you know this, where the robots would Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Yeah, where the robots would watch movies and make fun of it.
Right. So if you can imagine that with this reality show, there's a reality show going on with 20-year-olds, and the basic question is who's going to hook up with who? Because all these people are very attractive. So the question is who's going to hook up with who? Who's going to confess their crush on each other? And the Japanese culture is more polite. It's more demure. There was an American guy who's an illustrator on the show, and he spoke Japanese. So he's trying to hook up with this beautiful Japanese actress. But like I said, of all these good-looking young people, Hana Kimura comes in, and she blows everybody away. Now, the other little aspect of this, guys, that I found out was that Hana was actually half Indonesian by ethnicity. Her mother was also a wrestler, but because of the fact that her mother was half Indonesian, according to my source on the internet, it could be, not a great source, but there's a certain level of bigotry towards mixed blood people in Japan. More so.
I know that. Yeah, I know that to be true.
Well, she was the victim of that. So if you compound that she had going on with the fact that look, we talk about progressive country.
Mikey, is that the reason being cited for her suicide?
The reason being cited, I think, is too one-dimensional, because they're basically saying she was cyberbullied into death. And some of these pro wrestlers like Joey Ryan and Enzo Amore wanted to hop into the mix and say, see, you jerky wrestling fans, you shouldn't cyberbully us. So some of these wrestlers decided to put a little shine on themselves, which I didn't care for. But the way that I understand it, she was more so bullied by her own people from the reality show, not from wrestling fans. That's not to say that didn't cause me to reflect on Saturday night about some of the things I've said about some of the wrestlers. Because I did start to think like, hey, I've said a lot of stuff about Joey Ryan. I've said a lot of stuff about the thumb in the ass spot from PWG, which included Tommaso Ciampa and Jushin Liger. And not to say that I don't feel those same things, but I would really hate for any pro wrestler to take any action because of something I said about their actual wrestling. I have nothing against these talents as people. It's what they do in the ring that concerns me. There was another situation that came up with JD from New York and Alexa Bliss. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
No, that's a good example.
Yeah,
that's another one that's
go ahead, Dan. I'm glad you brought that up, Mikey. Dan, go ahead and address that. I got a problem with this kid.
Yeah, what Mikey's talking about, and I think personally, what he was going for happened. We were talking about the fans not knowing Japanese wrestlers. 99.9% of the world had never heard of this loser until he got into social media and got after Alexa Bliss, and things started getting reported on. But he made some comments, and now the problem with this story, and this is where the wrestling fans get involved, is he's since come out and people have been harassing his family. His parents have been getting threatening phone calls, people showing up at his mom's house. And that's okay. What he said was awful, but there's a point when I don't give a crap, what you're saying in that sense. Now you're out there advocating murder, goose stepping, whatever, the evil Nazi shit. That's a different story. He said some stuff that was disparaging of a woman, and now his mom's getting death threats. That story, I think, more than her, has shined a spotlight on the bad wrestling fans, because Mikey touched on. Mikey touched on the story is that not everybody involved in her suicide was a wrestling fan. Most of the people involved in this DJ and Alexa Bliss have been wrestlers and wrestling fans, and it's gotten very much out of hand. Now he started it. I'm glad he's going to suffer consequences, but not. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I got something to say about this. First of all, I watched this kid. Okay, not as much as I did, but just enough to keep current. Okay, so if we're all going to take responsibility as a society, then we have to take responsibility as wrestling fans. Unfortunately, it's all too easy to be brave behind the keyboard.
Yes.
None of these people, none of them, and I'm calling you out, that all you guys out there call yourself wrestling fans. I'm calling you out, okay? Because you don't have the balls to say anything to somebody's face, okay? People know that if they got a problem with us or this show, you got an open forum. Fire up your Skype. Come on here. Air your grievance. Tell me what your problem is, and I'll fix it for you. But JD from NY 206, Jerry.
How are we, boys?
Okay. Oh, here's Brian Pillman.
Oh, Brian with the run-in. You just interrupted Angelo's promo on somebody.
Am I on? Oh, you're looking at my
You're on, man. Right. Just interrupted Angelo's promo.
So JD from NY, I got a problem with this kid. Because anybody can sit there and scream and yell and holler and shout out righteous indignations all day long. But say something constructive, asshole. Okay? Say something constructive. I'm calling you out. If you got a problem with anything we've said, my show is open forum. Come on in. I don't think you got the balls. I really don't think you have the balls. And anybody else listening to this who thinks they've got the cojones to show up, you got an open forum. Welcome aboard. Speaking of welcoming aboard, still in the middle of his dinner is our friend Brian Pillman Jr. How you doing, babe?
How are you guys?
Good.
Brian,
I'm doing good. Brother, you're starting to scare me, babe.
The world's opening up. There's a lot of business to be had, and I just got hit with one of the busiest days of my life. I was driving around. I went to the gym. I worked out with a guy named Chris Van Vliet. You guys might know him.
Oh,
good,
sure,
the interview show.
Yeah, I got a shout out to Chris. I I'm trying to get him on the show. I sent him a Twitter inbox. So if you get a chance to talk to him, tell that sucker I want him on here.
Yeah, I can definitely. I talk to him all the time. We're going to work out tomorrow at 3 p.m. So
I would love to have him on
here in good old Kentucky, Ohio.
Okay, terrific. So how you doing? You got your workout in, the world's opening up, and you got lost in the shuffle?
Yeah, I went there, and then I went to the boxing gym.
Brother, you had the old man over here getting a little scared.
Jake Hager.
You worked out with Jake Hager today at the boxing gym?
No, I'm saying he's Jake's coach.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The same coach. I have worked out with Jake before, though, in Tampa before.
Right.
I ran some sprints with him at the end of it because I just showed up at the end of his workout.
Nice.
He was gassed up, or not gassed up, but he was tired. And his coach made him do sprints, and he tried to argue with him. And his coach was like, "No, you're doing them. If you want to be the AEW champion, you got to do these sprints." This is before he even debuted it too. It was funny.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know. I was like, "Oh, yeah."
So welcome back, Brian Pillman Jr. Welcome back for part 2.
Sorry for showing up late, guys. Just like I said, busy day.
Oh, that's okay. Look, you're a young guy. You got nothing holding you down, But I do take blood pressure medicine, so just so you know. Got me a little scared there. I was like, "Oh shit!" The guest of honor didn't show up for his own party.
No, yeah, we'll be good. Yeah, we got this. So
okay,
I've been looking forward to this podcast actually, but I actually had a couple important phone calls and stuff. So yeah,
well, I want you to hang out with us for a little while.
Very positive for here. I think people are starting to realize that the jig is up.
Yeah,
as far as
April Fools, right?
So you got the rest of the night to yourself then, right?
Yeah, I'm chilling. I'm right here. You guys got me.
All right, good.
I
just want to make sure that you're not going to up and book on us for like a hot date or some shit.
No. Are you guys recording now, or did you start recording it?
Oh, we're on, baby.
Okay.
All right. Well, we are back, part 2 with Brian Pillman Jr. Nice to have you. Now I can calm down and drink my coffee, relax a little bit, maybe have another cigarette. So when last we left off, we're talking about your burgeoning career.
Yeah.
We know where you came from. We know where you want to go. Then tonight we're going to find out how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Mikey,
yes.
I want to let you start off with the round of questions, then we'll let Dan. I think, you know what? I think it's pretty much just going to be Mikey and Dan tonight. I'm going to sit back and be the old man tonight.
Well, I started watching your run in this MLW Opera House Cup tournament today, Brian. And I didn't know what to expect because I hadn't watched a whole lot of MLW for a while. So I was kind of catching up on some of this stuff. And I really enjoyed it. Your opening match, you beat TJP. And then the next match, you got past Thatcher. And for those that don't know, because I didn't know going into this Opera Cup was something that Davey Boy Smith Jr. said that he inherited from Stu Hart. And this was like an actual cup, like a real cup that he got when they stole the Hart House. And so it was pretty cool because this thing had like a 71-year history to it, but it hadn't been defended since Stu Hart defended it or won it, 71 years ago. Mm-hmm. And this cup was actually fought for in tournaments in opera houses and playhouses. Mm-hmm. And being a theater writer and a screenwriter, I took a special liking to that. So I just thought it was a cool concept, and I thought that the tournament was kind of on this, scientific wrestling, version of pro wrestling that we have now, where there's not blood and guts. The matches are pretty cleanly fought. And you were kind of the dark horse underdog. I was also pretty impressed by the whole thing. And it comes down to you and Davey Boy Smith in the finals. And I won't spoiler for anyone that wants to go on MLW and watch these matches on YouTube. But Brian, can you talk about, because Davey Boy Smith has been your tag team partner as well. So what it reminded me of was kind of a prior generation when Owen Hart and the British Bulldog fought for the first European title on Monday Night Raw one night. So I kind of enjoyed this tournament. Can you talk a little bit about the tournament, maybe what Davey Boy brought to the table with this thing, and your thoughts on the whole deal?
Well, as you know, Davey Boy he's quite an accomplished martial artist and grappler. And so we're going through this tournament, obviously my eyes were set on the prize, but I knew immediately when I got in the ring with him that, when you're in there with one of your brothers too, it's almost just a shoot, because at that point he's just going to hit me with live rounds, and because he knows I can't complain, and he knows that he's going to beat the respect into me, and that's all the respect of the Hart Foundation and me being able to go in the ring and say I'm part of the Hart Foundation and getting close to Tyson and Natty and everybody, Bruce Hart, the whole family, going to see everybody. He was, at some point or another, I was going to have to pay those dues. I wasn't just going to walk in and get the Hart Foundation name. So I'm pretty sure that ass beating that I got in that ring, I can't tell you if I won or lost it, spoiler alert, but as far as the ass beating that I got from Davey Boy Smith Jr., I'm pretty sure that was several generations of dues that needed to be paid.
Welcome to the family, right?
So as far as my
kid.
children are in the Hart Foundation, my children's children will be in the Hart Foundation, because on that night it was a very fun match with TJP that I'm very used to. That sort of that indie style, that very back and forth. We were technical when we were technical, and we were action-packed and high-flying when we needed to be action-packed and high-flying. So we really met toe-to-toe, me and TJP. I think Thatcher, going into that one, he's obviously more of a ground-based guy. I think I maybe caught him off guard with a little bit of my unpredictability and some aerial moves. But other than that, I was for sure that I was outclassed by him. I think I got a little lucky there. And it was just fate that I was on my best day and he maybe was having an off day. And that's just how it goes. But I knew as soon as I stepped in the ring with Davey Boy that it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about surviving, and it was about getting out of the ring with as few injuries as I could get. And it was the most physical match I've ever been a part of. I took suplexes on the concrete floor.
Do you like that kind of match?
My stomach was hurting so bad just from it being shaken around so many times from being slammed on the ground. I've never had a huge stomach ache after a match, but I felt like some of my organs were either had been punctured or torn or something. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever had.
Wow.
Brian, do you like that kind of match, knowing that you were in a fight?
It really taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about not only how to defend myself against a bigger opponent, but it taught me a lot of respect for the business. And it taught me that
Absolutely.
If you really want to get to that level, if you really want to make it, you can't play wrestler. You just can't. You can't play around.
It's funny that you say that,
because
we were just talking about that.
As much as you want the fans to believe, you have to believe. If you don't believe in yourself,
Exactly.
what the hell should they
Just
believe?
talking about it, Dan.
And if Santa Claus shows up in the fucking chimney and he's not even wearing his goddamn costume, you think kids are going to believe in him?
Yeah.
He just shows up half-assed, he doesn't even eat the cookies, he's having an off day, you just can't have an off day or people are going to lose their belief in you.
Sure.
And too many people shit on the business today, too many of these so-called performers, artistic performers.
Yeah.
It's my job. It's probably my entire legacy, my entire prophecy to fulfill is to get them out of the business and to show them what real greatness is. And I think Davey Boy has been the key to that. He's been a huge catalyst to that. I learned a lot from Teddy too. Despite Teddy's antics and the types of trouble he gets in, he's one of the few people that really respects the business. And if you got a problem with Teddy,
that's what pisses me off.
He might have buried here.
Brian, that's what pisses me off about Teddy. And I got to tell you, and I know that you know him, but that really bothers me because he can work and he's fucking good.
But
he's really, really good. I just don't understand why he does what he does. Whether he can't help himself, I don't know what it is.
It's like he made a deal with the devil. It's like the devil was like, here, you're the best. You're going to be the best wrestler in the world. ever. You're going to have every move ingrained in your soul and in your muscle memory. You're never going to get injured. Teddy's never been injured.
Right.
But there's the caveat. You're not going to be able to keep a job. You're going to have issues with authority, stuff like that. So he made a deal with the devil. He set out to be the greatest wrestler ever and to work the boys and to truly, be the best and to be the most, controversial, draw kind of figure. You kind of want Teddy on your show. You kind of
And I understand that.
It turns it up a notch.
I've been around this business long enough to understand that, and I do understand it. The problem is when you spend more time working the boys than working the crowd, you're going to have to eat with the boys, and he's got to heat with a lot of guys.
And that's that's how it works. But at the same time, crowd loves him. He's always over.
Crazy.
Yeah, so
it's crazy.
You got to pick your battles, and I think, like I said, Teddy, God bless him, love him. I know he might have went on a podcast recently and buried me a little bit, but he can bury me all he wants. He did a great deal of business for me in MLW and carried me through some matches when I was inexperienced. So, if anything, I still owe him a debt of gratitude. So,
I was going to say.
I just want to good on you, Angelo. That's actually a personal best. You said you were going to sit back, and you stayed back for a whole 5 minutes. That's actually I
thought it was 5 seconds.
Longest you stayed back since I've been with the show.
Dan, listen to me. Less is more.
Right. But Brian, I want to get on. You actually started with the thought about everything reopening again, gyms and whatnot. Before you called in, one of the topics we were talking about was some of the local promotions throughout the country that are going to start phasing in crowds and whatnot. What is the mindset now going in that you obviously you mentioned the gym, you're getting back into it where soon before you know it, you guys are being wrestlers are going to be back on your old schedules. What is the mindset? Put us in the mindset of getting back into that from having been forced away for the last couple months.
It's like I woke up one morning and it was like a gunshot went off. And I immediately knew that I needed to start moving. I needed to start making moves because wrestling was on its way back. Nobody called me. Nobody texted me and said, hey, I started to see, some states were opening up. Some posters were going out. They're having WWE still having their empty arena shows. They're putting the boys in the crowd. AEW started that trend, obviously. And you could tell, when they first started doing it, I for some reason was like, why is AEW so much more entertaining to watch? And it's because they started with the fans in the crowd.
Yeah.
Obvious. I don't know how WWE missed that fucking idea. I mean, when I was at Lance Storm's school in Calgary, he made us all be in the crowd and cheer and shit. So I don't know how that went over fucking their head, but now they're doing it.
Especially considering they were filming from the Performance Center where they literally had a warehouse full of students they could have picked up.
People, they could have went to Full Sail and been let some kids. Either way, regardless, that's not off the topic of what we were talking about. But no, I felt it was coming. I felt that if I didn't get back into shape as soon as possible, that wrestling was going to creep up on me. No, I'll tell you what happened. Somebody did ask me for a booking. They were like, hey, can you work this weekend? And any other young guy would have taken it. I'm not going to say which company it was, but it was a very prominent wrestling company in the independent scene, one of the more controversial, companies, but very prominent. They was like, hey, you want to wrestle this weekend? It's empty arena, this, that, or the other. And deep down inside, I really wanted to take it, but I had to turn it down because, any other kid might have done it, but I have so much more respect for my physique and my ability that I didn't feel confident being like I wouldn't have taken his money, and I'm not going to wrestle for free. So, am I going to show up at any ring I can and train and help out and try to get back in shape? Yeah, but I'm not going to take anybody's money right now until I'm where I need to be. And that's what I told him. I was like, dude, I do not feel good. I was like, I took a 2-month nap. I took a nap for 2 months. I don't even know what happened the past 2 months. That's what the coronavirus did. And this pandemic has been nothing but a blessing in disguise because I'm hungrier than ever. I'm getting stronger than ever. I'm working out harder than ever, and that's because you tend to take things for granted. You get complacent, and then when the government just goes and takes it all away from you. I mean, my whole life, my whole way of living was taken away from me in one weekend. I did a show in Tijuana, Mexico. I got home. I had a cold. I felt poor, so I canceled my show to Vegas. Well, guess what? That Las Vegas show was the last independent show to happen since. And a bunch of guys were on it, and I'm sure it was a great show. I wish I would have done it, but because I had a cold and I felt sick, I felt it was in my best interest, everybody else to not be getting on an airplane, coughing and sneezing and shit.
Right.
Yeah. But any other day, any other year, I would never cancel a booking for a fucking cold. You know what I mean? I'm a warrior. I'm a soldier. I've never canceled a booking. I canceled one booking, I think, at the beginning of my career because I didn't plot out the logistics right, and I would have had to drive from like Wisconsin to like Cleveland and back or some crazy shit. I don't know. But either way, I've only ever canceled one booking, and that was the second booking I canceled, and it felt terrible, but I was just frozen. I couldn't get on. I had my bags packed and everything. But I couldn't order that lift because I knew that I was sniffling and I was sneezing and I had a headache and a sore throat and who knows what I had. It was just the flu.
It was not the time to take risks because when that COVID broke, anyone with a cough or a sneeze was getting double looks from everybody. So
they could have taken me and put me in fucking into a cell or something or in quarantine. Right. It was just a risky time. I wasn't going to get on a plane with a sneeze, And
you did the right thing. But Brian, I wanted to ask you a follow up if I could. If you can talk about this, if you can't, that's fine. But right now, are you under contract with MLW exclusively? Are they on hold? Is it an open contract? Is it just show up and we'll pay you? Because
yeah. I mean, I signed with them for 3 years. 3 years, 30 shows, but because this is happening right at the third year mark. So yeah, they're hoping that we can get through this and we can get back into shows. And I kind of like their approach of they don't want to do no fan shows. They do not want to have a single show where fans are not paid. And I think too that I respect that because I never, ever, ever, ever wanted to wrestle in front of no fans. Now you throw the boys in the mix, you throw a bunch of guys out there talking shit. I think that makes it a little fun. I can go out there and wrestle and try to pop the boys. And if I'm on TV, the people at home can be entertained. As long as there's some noise out there, a little background, a little cheer, a little boo, it's like, okay. Wrestle, they're not, they can't hear my every breath out there. Give us a little noise in the background. So
Brian, I think it's a little too late for WWE.
What do you mean?
As far as bringing people in for ambient crowd noise.
No, I mean, I think that they did that, and I think that people gave them positive feedback for it. So I think they'll continue to do it.
Go ahead, Mikey.
Well, I guess maybe what Angelo is getting at is it too late for WWE to save face with some of the fans that might have tuned out? But I guess that's up to the fans of WWE to decide.
No, it's a continuous product. It's a product that's been around for, I don't know how many years the WWF's been around. Maybe
1963.
So it's like, are they going anywhere? I don't think so. Are they going to face a decline? Are they going to face a rise based on the business decisions they make? Yeah. But I think it was a good business decision to put some goons in the crowd, even if they are workers, I think it was a good business decision. And whether the fake viewers come back or not, I don't know. But the company's going to be there, in 10 years, in 20 years, So it's like, is it too little too late? Well, it's never too late to go to the WWE. It's never too late for them to increase their brand. Vince McMahon he's marketing to a global audience. You know what I mean? He's pushing people that are Hispanic. He's pushing people that are Indian. He's pushing people that are, Bulgarian. Every single nationality. He's a very global marketing kind of person. So he's going to test all these things in different areas. He's not just going to make a decision just because people are saying on Twitter. Twitter and Instagram, they only make up a small percentage of the actual fans that are watching, right? So that's something you got to think about too. And I come from a corporate world. I worked for a Fortune 50 company, And a lot of decisions that people think that, like they're online, like booking, just like even as much as even little things like the booking decisions might be influenced by an actual business data analyst, somebody that looks at data. They look at how many likes and retweets a picture of Roman Reigns gets versus a tweet about Dolph Ziggler, and then they weigh that against the market in India, and they do data, and there's just so many numbers that go into these decisions that I have to laugh at fans and even some of the people in the business that criticize, the journalists and all that, and they criticize the decisions that the WWE makes. And I'm like, dude, they've got 8 people that are each paid $80,000 or more a year to look at a bunch of numbers to decide what the best.
Well, Brian, you mentioned something really important there, the social media aspect of it. That's a relatively new thing, relatively speaking, with regards to wrestling.
What'd you say? When was the WWF around? 1962?
1963, they had Bruno beat Buddy Rogers in May of '63, and Rogers
it's
only
actually
had
been around since 1961. If we want to,
exactly.
So, and how long has social media been a huge thing? Since about what?
Well, here's where I was going with that. How important is social media in the overall product or the development thereof, given the fact that it's a fairly new thing with regard to the wrestling product. We were just talking before you joined us about particular individuals in social media who, for whatever reason, people listen to. I don't know why, but they do. And it seems to me that these, faceless big mouths in the wilderness are garnering the attention of not only the larger federations, but everybody seems to be listening to them. And I don't understand for the life of me why you would listen to some guy that's never been into a ring, that's never had a fight in his life. What makes him an expert? Why? Because he's got 100,000 idiots.
Yeah,
that are going to
it becomes blind leading a bunch. So
videos.
So to talk on that point, that's where I'll say that social media is not necessarily great for the corporation, right? It's more of a bonus for the boys and for the fans, and it sort of evens the playing field, right?
Before social media, how to work it, sure.
Yeah, all the marketing, everything you were seeing and looking at was created by the WWE through their marketing campaigns and how they controlled everything. Well, now you give every pro wrestler, you give every fan, you give everybody, you give every commentator, you give every single guy that's ever had a drop of coffee in the business or even just bought a ticket. They all have a marketing tablet. They have a marketing tool in the palm of their hands, and they have global reach. And so now that kind of evens the playing field, right? Now the boys can build their brand on their own. They can build their brand on the independents. They can get booked through these other shows. So what does WWE have to do? They have to keep up with that. They have to follow suit with the social media. They have to dominate the social media. So that way, they maintain the marketing monopoly there.
Right.
But social media has been great for evening the playing field. And that's why the independent scene has seen a rise in popularity. And guys like me can make a living on it. I know tons of guys that don't have a famous last name that make a living on the indies because they're great workers and they're phenomenal wrestlers. But
guys like
years
me,
ago,
Brian, that are, of the old fart generation who remember wrestling as a certain way and a certain mindset, and perhaps who don't quite frankly, I'm just be honest, I don't understand, nor do I think I really want to understand how social media works. I'm not real good at it. That's why Mikey Messier takes care of our stuff.
Well, hey, you're on a podcast here. That in and of itself is a relatively new, kind of form of media.
Yeah, well, the thing though is
like you don't need to own a radio network anymore to have your own radio show.
Right? Yeah. Well, I was just going to tell you, I made my living for many years in radio. I've worked in two industries my whole life, Brian. Wrestling and music. That's it. And I understand marketing.
Mhm.
I understand promotion. What I don't understand is how social media makes the product better, if it makes it better, and what's to be gained from an Instagram or a Twitter or Facebook, God forbid.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it makes the wrestling product that you see it on TV better, as much as it just allows the talent to get themselves over and allows them to engage with the crowds without it needing to be approved. You know what I mean? Undertaker went his whole career without needing a Twitter or an Instagram. But why is that?
And
Because
Brian,
he was
one of the things I harp about a lot, and you can ask Mikey and Dan, they'll tell you ad nauseum, is I harp on the fact that you've got these keyboard warriors, every one of whom is an expert on wrestling.
they're terrible. Yeah.
Okay? That's my issue with social media. That's my issue. The bigger issue is there are dipshits out there listening to other dipshits and accepting their bullshit as fact.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's-
Dan,
that's
go ahead
key.
and I'm going to let you pick up, Dan, because you have a much calmer demeanor than I do, because I'm going to get myself fired up.
Well, I think that's key, and like Brian mentioned, how some people haven't needed it. I think social media has been one of the bigger double-bladed swords in wrestling for every talented performer that's been able to get picked up on YouTube or get seen through a Facebook share and made the business better. Unfortunately, there's some people today that we've talked about on the show that have, I guess our opinions or my opinion, made wrestling worse. Those people wouldn't exist without social media either. The niche markets that wrestlers are able to market to, these
Exactly
jumping
my
off
point.
jumping off their own houses through a pyramid of light bulb mud show idiots. No one would ever watch that video if platforms like YouTube didn't exist. They're able to get their names out there because of it, and it does damage. At the same time, some of the more talented indie wrestlers, there's been cases of AEW and WWE, New Japan, some of these big organizations signing people who a producer saw on YouTube or saw scrolling through Facebook, in a performance.
That's how you get hired. Yeah.
What's that?
So that's how you get hired.
Yeah, exactly.
Hire the guy with 100,000 followers, or we're going to hire the guy with 1,500 followers. Doesn't matter who's more qualified. This guy tweets something out, it's going to get
But
seen.
Brian, that is exactly my point.
Mhm.
And that's what I was trying to drive before. Talent is irrespective now.
Yeah.
Right.
And a guy like you, I don't know how many followers you have, but just for shits and giggles, let's say you got 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
Okay. And say you're really good at what you do. But there's some idiot who jumps off the second floor of the mall. Now he's got a million. Now he's got a million hits. Okay.
Yeah.
Hypothetically,
So some promoter somewhere is going to pay this asshole to jump off the second balcony of his building somewhere because he's got a million hits. Oh, I'm going to sell tickets. Oh, people are going to come to see him.
right.
It doesn't matter. He can fucking work.
Yeah.
And this is where
I'll tell you the answer to that, and it's been the number one rule since wrestling was ever anything. And I talked about it this weekend with Enzo, and it was the most important advice that Stone Cold Steve Austin gave me. And it is simple as, and it's even more important now with social media, but even back then it was still super important. Nothing else matters but getting over. Your number one goal when you go out there is to get over. Whether you do it with your cell phone, or you do it with your entrance theme, or you do it by being jacked to the gills, or you do it by being funny or saying that you're a demon that communicates with people with Danhausen. You know what I mean? Danhausen got over. People get over. If you get over, you get over. I don't care. You might have got over because you were a midget. You're like a legal midget. Or you might have got over because you're the Great Khali. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think anybody uses Great Khali footage when they're training people and how to work. You know,
Yeah.
But guess what?
Exactly.
He got over because he's 8 foot tall. You know,
Oddly enough, I actually enjoy the Pujambi prison match he had with Batista. I will admit to
I
that.
love the Great Khali. I think he's great. I think he's a phenomenal. I think he's a spectacular specimen to look at.
Mhm.
And if you could put somebody in the ring that's just, oh my God, look at that. You know, it's like one of the 8th wonders of the world. It's like, that's what wrestling's all about. You
Right.
know, I can show you a million guys who can roll perfectly and Irish whip and work and sell and do everything right. But if you're not over, what's the point?
Or are they going to put asses in
Yeah,
seats?
is somebody going to buy a ticket to see that? Or is somebody just going to super duper respect it?
Well, that's always the question I ask on this show, and I've said it many times. The difference between getting over and being over.
Mm-hmm.
From Brian, I
And
wonder.
you don't
to the
have
extent to the
let's
kid that
be
jumped
honest
off the
about
balcony. If you want to talk about the balcony dive,
Yeah.
that kid got over. But how long was that? You know, was that a sustainable
Well, and that
way of getting
well,
over?
the
No,
other
he
thing,
was over
the
for 2
question
weeks,
I have,
and he doesn't have $100,000 contract, so he
right?
get that over. You know,
Yeah, well, and that's my point. You know, define what is over.
you got to
I-
have a sustainable way of getting over every time you go through the curtain. You can't go through the curtain and jump off a balcony every single match.
Brian, I have asked that question to just about every guest that's appeared on this show, and
Yeah.
I have not gotten the same answer twice. Honest
How to
to
get
God.
over?
Yeah, I have not gotten the same answer twice. The
Well,
difference between getting over and being over.
Well, look at Enzo. Look at his career. What did he do? He came through the curtain. He said the same exact phrase on a microphone every single night he went through the curtain.
Yeah.
He probably would have said a bunch of other random shit every night, but the people in charge, the directors, the agents, the people that understand wrestling, the Vince McMahons of the world, said, hey, don't mix it up. Say that same goddamn phrase every single night.
Every night,
Till
yeah.
everybody else, and when the crowd says it back to you, when they know the lyrics to your song,
Yeah.
you're over. Right? People want to relate. People want to imitate what you're doing, right? You know, people can do this. People can put the pythons up. People in the crowd can't go jump off a mall balcony. You know, that's not a sustainable way to get over. Sure, you're going to be remembered by that.
It's not a sustainable way to live, brother. I got news for you.
Mick Foley is remembered for, you know, the big cage thing, the big fall there.
Yeah.
But he was also already notorious for taking huge bumps. And that's how he sustainably got over, because he was so tough. His body was made of straight up diamond. And he could, I just saw the motherfucker walking
Yeah.
at a convention a couple months ago. And I'm like, how do you even walk?
Right.
Yeah, well, he can't. That's the problem.
I seen him walk, and I'm like, I mean, obviously he has a little trouble.
Oh,
it's
he's
like,
got a brother. He has a lot of
he
trouble.
paid his dues that way to get over. There's always a price, you know. There's always a price to get over. Right? It depends. Are you going to be the guy that jumps off everything and is tough as nails every night of every week? Whatever you do to get over has to be able to. You have to be able to do it every night of the week.
Well, to the point I said to a guest on the show the other night, said, you know, are you going to remember your name when you're 30? Are you going to be able to walk when you're 35? Will you live to be 40? The chances are, the answer is no to all the above if you keep up doing what you're doing. Mick Foley is extraordinarily fortunate that he's able to walk upright.
Well, he's also a very, very intelligent person, and I think that he understood that his niche in the business was his ability to take pain and his ability to survive. And
Or maybe he's not smart enough to know that he's hurting.
Well, yeah, but I'm just like I'm saying, everybody found their own way to get over, and that worked out for him. What worked for him isn't going to work for Steve Austin. You know, it's what Steve Austin did to get over isn't going to work for anybody else. Right?
Yeah, Dan, let's talk wrestling.
Okay,
go for it.
Well, going off what Brian was talking about, it's funny you talk about going over, being over. I mean, you look at someone like a Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, some of the biggest names, biggest draws in the history of the business. no one is ever going to remember Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin for their technical in-ring ability. They're going to remember the moments they can put together. I touched on a couple weeks ago the Rock and Roll Express winning the NWA tag titles on one of the episodes of Power. I don't remember for the life of me whether or not that was a good match. It was probably terrible, but I don't care because it told a story and that's all I cared about. It was the moment. I was in the moment, and Ricky Morton can still do his thing all these years later. So Brian, touching on that, where do you as a performer, as you said, you mentioned earlier, you're training harder than you have before, you're working harder than you have before. Where do you start to blur the line between how to work the crowd and how to work the abilities?
Excellent question. I taught you well, son.
I'm sorry, I totally got lost with that question. You said
what I'm asking is there's performers that can work the crowd, and there's performers that can go in the ring, but maybe not have that aura about them. You mentioned you training with Lance Storm. I think he's a great example of someone who's remembered endlessly for being one of the best technical wrestlers in the history of the business, but maybe not as much for his charisma, despite the fact that he had it. It just wasn't the character.
I'll tell you exactly what Lance told me. And he'll tell you that he was 2/3, of a full package. And there's a triangle. There's a Venn diagram of attributes, and it just comes down to three things, right? Your in-ring ability, your physique, how you look, and then the third thing is the charisma and getting over with the people in that sense, and cutting promos in that too. So Lance was exceptionally amazing physique, natural physique. There's one star, gold star. And then the second gold star was he was probably one of the greatest, safest workers that ever lived when it comes to safety to action ratio. Everything he did, he didn't take risks that he knew were not safe risks, if that makes sense. Like he knew that the bumps over time were going to tear his body little by little, but he would not take a crazy bump if he knew that it could fuck him up that night. You know what I mean? So talking about a guy that he's very smart about physics. He understands gravity and shit because I've seen him control it with my own eyes. Like he's a freak of nature, and he also was a volleyball standout athlete. He's one of the highest jumping people I've ever seen in my life. So freakish athletic ability combined with freakish control over your surrounding, over the ring, over his opponent. I mean, he made other people look like they were better wrestlers than they were.
Right.
And an impressive physique where he would work out so much that you would think he's on steroids, and he's never done a drop of steroids because I know the guy and he's the most pure human I've ever met in my life. But I will say he's addicted to coffee, and that's a huge vice. Now, I joke with him because he's like, I've never done drugs in my life. And he drinks caffeine, and I'm like, that is a drug. It makes you better at life. It's a performance-enhancing drug that's just widely acceptable by the entire world. Like, but caffeine is a performance-enhancing drug. Tell me any different.
I see Lance
I'm about
Storm
to
as a
enhance
black
my
coffee.
performance right now, Brian.
Yeah, he's enhancing himself right now. You know what I mean? It's like you take a boner pill. That's a performance-enhancing drug, right?
There you go.
Is he a black coffee drinker? It looks like
Brian,
So
let me
that's
ask you a question,
that's
Brian.
the formula, right? You got to have 2 out of 3, and if you have all 3, then you're the perfect package. You're you're Chris Jericho, right?
Brian, I had a guy on the show the other night. We had a Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer on the show the other night, Doc Diamond, Hall of Fame wrestler and trainer. And he's one of the guys that started the Monster Factory with Larry Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him a question. Doc, guy comes into you. He plunks down his money, says, I want to be a wrestler. What's the first thing you teach him? Okay. Without hesitation, first thing he teaches him, who are you? Who are you? It's the first thing he teaches him. Who is this guy? Because if you don't know who you are, then how are they going to know who you are? And I said, Doc, what if you got a guy comes in, he's got great personality, he's full of energy, he can talk, he's got a look, but he can't work. What do you do with a guy like that? And without hesitation, and Mikey and Dan will tell you, he said, you make him a manager. So I'm going to ask you, what happened to the great managers? And have you ever run across a guy that had that 2 out of 3 factor? He had the look, he had the physique, but he had no workable skill. Or maybe he was great on a mic, but couldn't work in a ring.
Oh, you're saying physique and mic and no ring ability?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'd say that's a tough one. But I'd say that maybe when I was first starting out to wrestle, I was in a sense like that because I was just training and learning. But I took to the promos very well, and I was natural at that. And I was already in better shape than everybody at the training camp. I was the best looking guy there. So I think when you take a guy, for instance, I got a lot of guys that I knew that I grew up with that are extremely charismatic, super funny, really cocky guys that could talk shit and everything. And they're also in great shape, but they would have to learn, the art of wrestling. So I think, when it comes to picking up random guys off the streets or from the gym, like a bodybuilder or something, they're probably going to be less knowledgeable about wrestling and work rate and everything, but they might be really good at those other two things. So, but what you have in wrestling a lot now is young kids that grew up as big fans. So they've seen all the matches, they've seen all the moves, and they've been trying to train. They've been trying to break in since they were 12. So they have really good in-ring skills. But because they were maybe a little more introverted growing up, they don't have the mic, or maybe they spent so much time training and watching film that they didn't take the working out as serious,
Brian, what's the one thing that makes a guy untrainable?
I think untrainable. I mean, that just comes down to your attitude, right? And your attention span. If you're a guy like me that went to college and finished school and went and trained at a corporate job and was coachable there and got to make a living like that. If you could succeed at being a normal person, then you should be coachable enough to wrestle. But a lot of times people might get into wrestling for the wrong reasons, or maybe they fail in a normal life. Maybe they didn't get good grades or succeed in college. So then they try to get into wrestling, and then they find out that they're not very coachable because, well, they weren't coachable to begin with, So
well, let's talk about what are the right reasons to get into the business. If you think that you can do it and you have a certain look and you've got a certain level of charisma, what are the right reasons to get into the business?
Well, for the longest time, it was to make some money. You look back at all the old school guys. They weren't trying to take it too many bumps. They weren't trying to pop the boys. They were trying to work as little as they could and make the most money out of it and get every little drop out of every little pop, and every bump meant something. So if you look at history, the best reason to get in the business was to get money and to get famous. I know that's why my dad was trying to be in the NFL. He loved football, he loved hockey, and he loved wrestling, but his main motivation was to make a living and to have a good life for his family and his kids. Yeah. And all too often we lose sight of that today. Too many kids are willing to wrestle for little or no pay, and then they kill the business. And in turn, they might continue with their career of being passionate wrestlers, but they may never, ask for a raise, or they may never push for that. They may never push for that big push because they're happy with just being a wrestler.
Yeah.
But back then, guys weren't just happy going out there and breaking their necks. They wanted to be paid a lot of money to do it. So
yeah,
I think there's plenty of reasons people get in the business. I personally have a very important story. I have a very important reason to get in the business, but it's personal to me. Not everybody has a famous father that died on the road.
Sure.
My dad had a lot of work left to do, so I have kind of a personal goal within myself to finish that work and to finish that job. But that's a very rare thing to happen, So sure. But at the end of the day, I want to get paid too. I want to help my Aunt Linda and help her with the taxes that she needs to pay that are backed up. I want to help out my sister who's going through what she's going through and get my family squared up because, you know, the death of my father was very tragic. It did divide my family and put a lot of people in some financial situations. So
Yeah.
there is a little bit of that too. You know, I've got a few goals in mind, but the respect of my father and the respect of the boys and the respect of my peers in the business is one of the most important things to me as well. So,
Right.
I'm not just going out there to say I'm a pro wrestler. Like, I'm not just like, I didn't grow up like watching wrestling every night. You know, I grew up on the streets, getting in trouble and shit. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a tougher upbringing. I wasn't just sitting at home, you know, watching wrestling because I thought wrestling was the enemy. I thought it killed my father. It killed me.
We got an echo, guys. Got an echo.
Is it me?
No, I think, Angelo, do you have a second phone on or something?
Oh, here we go. We're good.
Hey, Brian, I wanted to get back in there. I know Angelo's taking the night off from interviewing tonight, so I wanted to ask a question.
It's okay. I was running late. It's not his fault. He's tired.
Brian, this was a topic I wasn't sure about bringing up, but you just did, which was your family history. And as a longtime Brian Pillman fan, you know, your father, I got the action figure right there, the stomp.
Oh, yeah, brother. The
Yeah.
stomps are classic.
Well, I've got one tattooed on my leg, for crying out loud, of Pillman, Brian Pillman. But your situation with your mom going on Monday Night Raw, you've talked about it before in interviews with different, you know, Chris and everybody else.
Yeah.
But I guess I just want to follow up. Now that you've gotten some success, you're wrestling regularly for MLW. You were in that AEW Battle Royal at one point. Who knows what the future might bring for you? I just hope that, you know, I kind of grew up in a dysfunctional family myself, so I'm pulling for you and your family that even if things aren't perfect with everybody gets somewhat along. Is there anything you want to say about the update to the family situation? Or is that something you want to leave off the book?
Something you want to leave off the
that
book.
guys.
Look at that echo, guys.
Angelo?
Yeah.
You got that echo?
I still hear the echo.
Is that me?
No, there we go. We got it. We're good. Yeah, we had a little issue here. We're good. Go ahead. Continue.
I guess I was just asking Brian if that family.
You want an update on the family situation?
Yeah,
right?
if that's something you want to talk about.
No, it's absolutely. It's a big reason that I'm in this business, and I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to build something back up. I'm trying to create a family within the Pillman name again. My mother did a great job at tearing it apart. She did everything she could to ruin everything and burn every bridge. But as you can see, I'm reconnecting with a lot of the brothers, a lot of the guys in the business, and I'm rebuilding those bridges, and I'm rebuilding the Pillman name. So as I've grown older and gotten more mature, I've learned to, you know, forgive my mother, and I've reestablished a good relationship with her, you know, and in return, she's given me stories and little secrets about her interactions with people in the business long ago. You know, how she got to know Triple H and Vince and different guys. And it's always nice to hear those little insights. So it just kind of starts with me maturing and understanding the goals that are at hand and understanding that I can't change her. So I just have to accept her. And my sister, Brittany's been doing really well. You know, she's got a boyfriend now. And all the things that kind of damaged us when we were younger, we're starting to outgrow, and we're starting to discipline ourselves to be better people. You know, I had a lot of bad habits growing up. I got in a lot of trouble. Could have been worse though. I could have ended up with the wrong crowd. But I always had this longing for excellence, and I always was drawn to, you know, the football players and you know, showing up on time. And my uncle Mike, you know, he's 70 years old. He would always get on me for shit, you know, and it was like you had to have good grades to play football. You had to have good grades to play on the lacrosse team in college. So through the pursuit of athleticism and greatness and excellence in those fields, I was able to achieve an education and so to speak, kind of, you know, bring some credibility to who I am as a person. I think having a college degree would be great going into any company that would want to hire.
Absolutely.
I can do any
Well,
job there.
Dan, I'm going to give you the last round.
Okay.
You got it, kid.
All right. Well, I guess as we wrap up here, I was hoping you could expand a bit now on. Mike touched on your contract, and Angelo was talking about the evolution and all. We really wanted to get into your goals and how you're going to get there. Mm-hmm. So, final question. And now, as the world starts to reopen, what is your main goal, say, by the end of the year, and how do you plan on working towards it?
Well, I'll tell you, being a part of MLW is a very, very ambitious company. They were very ambitious to bring me on early in my career, and they put me out on TV before maybe other companies would have thought I was ready. But they allowed me to mature, and they allowed me to kind of come into my own. And for that fact alone, I think it's very possible that I could be the face of MLW, be the face of the company within the next couple of years. Now, with the virus and everything going on and all that, I don't know what the future holds in the immediate future, but I know that they're working on a deal with me, and I'll decide whether it's the right deal for me going forward. But so far, the company's taken great care of me. They protected me. They put me with all the right guys. They never tried to bury me. So as far as I'm concerned, if everything lines up with them, you'll see me with them for at least another year or two, and try to be on top of that company before I bridge over to the next one. But you never know. Things might not see eye to eye. I don't know. I'm gonna keep talking with them and figuring out. This whole pandemic has thrown a wrench into everything. Yeah. And as much as I love the company and want to stay there, I can't tell you exactly how that's going to happen or where I'm going to end up. So right now I'm just trying to keep everything more or less under wraps, and just happy to have been a part of it. And I will be happy to continue being a part of MLW if we can come to an agreement that satisfies me, considering all the other options that are available within the wrestling marketplace might not be hiring due to this pandemic, or they might be looking for talent down the road. I don't know. But I think the best case scenario is to just see what happens with the rest of the world opening up and start working out a deal with MLW. So
sounds like a plan, Brian.
Yeah, maybe an extension of some sort, just to kind of finish up the business we had planned and the cool storylines. We were going to do a big hair match and stuff, and so lots on the rise. And MLW is a very ambitious company.
Absolutely.
I believe they can get to the point where they're really paying guys some serious money, and I want to be one of those people on top of the business when they do. So
the company has roots from 2001 with Dusty Rhodes in Florida, from what I understand.
There's footage of Dusty. They got all kinds of history. So they're always going to be a part of wrestling as far as the independent scene goes. They'll always be a bridge to the bigger companies, and if all goes well, they'll be competing with those bigger companies before too long. So
I actually was friends when I was younger with Rich Bahini, the commentator.
Oh, he's the best. Yeah.
Rich Bahini and I went to a hockey game because Rich was a huge hockey fan as well. In fact, he used to do hockey commentary. We were buddies in Rhode Island before he moved on. So congratulations to everyone at MLW, because the product shows that the people there work hard. Yeah.
No, it's a really fun atmosphere. I love the way that they respect wrestling, and Court is very much same mindset as Vince, and how we're gonna tell stories and how we're gonna make money for guys, and I think Vince is obviously the most successful promoter in the world. So if I got a guy that used to learn under him, then we got a pretty smart guy running MLW.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I have no doubt that you'll succeed no matter where you go. I really, really believe that. And I want to thank you for joining us, and you are welcome back here anytime, and I'm sure we're going to bring you back. I have no doubt about that. So I will give you the opportunity. Plug away, my friend. Plug away.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys for having me. You can follow me on Instagram at Flyin Brian 41 or Twitter at Flyin Brian Jr. And I think we have another one of these scheduled as well, right?
I believe we do.
Well, awesome. I look forward to being on that one. And what day
Yes,
will we be
sir.
doing that? I guess down the road.
Hell, I'd bring it back every week if I could afford you. Mike Messier, promote your stuff. Like I need you to promote your stuff. Go ahead.
Well, MikeMessier.com for all your Mike Messier needs, wants, and desires. For those who are listening to us on the audio podcast world, please subscribe and like to both the Wrestling with the Future YouTube channel, because you can see some cool Mike Messier movies on that channel, as well as Mike Messier YouTube channel. And Avalonia Film Festival, my film festival, is still accepting submissions. There is a pro wrestling category, which is named the Ox, Nelson, and Dano Award after three friends of mine from the world of pro wrestling that are no longer with us. Ox Baker, Nelson Frazier, a.k.a. Viscera, a.k.a. Miss Mabel, and Danovich. Brian Danovich was a friend of mine that I met. We were actually starting to do a podcast together 2 summers ago, and he passed away a month later. So hopefully that's not a curse to anybody here. But, just doing more good stuff, and happy to be here. Yes, and I just want to mention real quick, as far as the Brian Pillman Sr. collection of matches, I think he wrestled Tom Zenk for the WCW Junior Heavyweight title. I want to say it's Super Brawl 2.
Hi, Mikey. We're not going to do that tonight.
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to that.
Oh, go ahead.
I already did. And
go ahead.
Just as a longtime Brian Pillman Sr. fan, it's such a thrill to talk to his son, his legacy. And watching that tournament tonight or today, that Stu Hart Cup, Opera Cup, there's some really good matches in that thing. So I'd suggest you check that out. Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely. MLW.com, MLW on YouTube. Check out my recent match with Fatu.
Oh, yeah.
One of my better matches that I believe that I performed my best. I almost won the title there, but they had to stop me. Somebody had to stop me from getting that title. And also, most recent match was in Tijuana, Mexico, with Davey Boy Smith Jr. against El Tejano and Escorpion. So that's a fun little tag match. I'm not the most tag wrestler in the world, but I'm getting better, and you're going to see a lot more of that from me in the future.
All right. And Dan the Man, you are up.
Well, like Mikey said, Wrestling with the Future, we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Wrestling Future. That's no G. I'm on Twitter, the man underscore WWTF. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Buy the T-shirt.
Yes, sir.
Back to you, Angela.
All right. Well, for Brian Pillman Jr., for Mr. Marvelous himself, Mike Messier. Mm-hmm. If his name was a website, it would be MikeMessier.com.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
I'll try not to be late.
And Dan, once again, is the man underscore WWTF on Twitter. And for myself, it's Angelo DeCipio on Facebook, Psychic Angelo on Twitter, at Wrestling Future on Twitter. We are available everywhere podcasts can be heard. We are right now on 122 platforms worldwide. And later this week, I have a very, very special announcement to make. Thursday evening, we will have the Memphis Flash himself, Superstar Bill Dundee, will be here for the entire show. Great guy. So, for Brian Pillman, for Mike Messier, and for Dan the Man, take care, everybody. Good night.
See you next
and
time.
Happy wrestling. Take care. Bye-bye.